Yes, we do have him online. Let me say a pleasant good evening to Mayaro MP Rushton Paray.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, Mikey. Good evening to your viewers and listeners.
Pleasure always to hear you, of course. I know you've had quite a hectic day. And you've been commenting so much on what has come into the spotlight since last Friday, when one of our banks here in TNT has reduced the amount on the credit card as far as for Forex. So much is taking place. You said that it's imperative that Finance Minister Come Imbert urgently prioritize the inclusion of the small and medium-sized enterprises sector in his upcoming foreign exchange stakeholder engagement. What are we looking at here, Mr. Paray? Because some of the questions I want to ask you, first of all, as far as this move by the banks, how will this affect overseas travel? Will Caribbean Airlines be affected? And what about those parents who are paying for tuition for their children abroad? So just some of the things off the top. Go right ahead.
Well, you can put an X on the checkbox on each one of the items that you've indicated. Now, I can tell you, with the current reduction in terms of the limit from $10,000 to $5,000 US per cycle on a credit card, it's very difficult for a small businessman who has to travel to the US or travel to England or somewhere and have to stay in a hotel for 5 days. Then you're out of money. Because after 5 days, you run up your charge on your credit card. There is nothing left to do. I mean, I have a personal experience. I have a child who is in university in Canada as well. And now we have to normally use the credit card to pay some of those fees. Now with a slash in the limits, basically I'm wondering if the bank wants us to go and apply for 2 more credit cards again. That is the kind of nonsense that we have to deal with as small business persons in this country, as parents, as you said. But I want to make one thing clear. This is not a commercial bank problem, right? I can tell you Scotiabank has had a lower limit for years. So, for instance, if you had a Scotiabank credit card, your limit was already $3,000 per cycle. So, Republic Bank started at around $15,000 in 2020, and then they cut it to 12, and they cut it to 10, and now they've cut it down to 5. So, as I said, it is not a commercial bank problem. It is a problem that the state has been unable to address for the last few years in terms of 1, new sources of foreign exchange, 2, the prioritization of the distribution of foreign exchange, and the impact it has on small business. And why I keep harping, Mikey, on small business, you would appreciate that small and micro enterprises are the highest employers in any country, in any society.
Right.
Because they are family businesses. Small and micro enterprises primarily are family businesses. And they hire people in the community. And inside these communities that they operate, they provide employment. 2, they provide small lines of credit for families who are on fortnight or monthly cycles in terms of their business. And they support community events, football match, cricket match, a little all-force tournament. So it has a community network cohesion when you have small businesses operating in your towns and communities. This pressure that is being placed, remember, for years, for the last few years, small businessmen can't go to the commercial bank across the counter and ask for $1,000 US. You are limited to $200, $100. At one point in time, I had to put an order for an entire month and say, look, hold some $30. I need $5,000 US, and every day at the close of the banking day, whatever remains, they put it aside for you. How can one run business like that? And it's really a problem that the state has not addressed.
No, again, and this in itself is compounded by the fact that we're coming out of a pandemic, and many of these SMEs were badly, financially, brutally beaten. Many of them were unable to reopen. Some of them just barely was able to keep the lights on. One would think that once again we would create an environment where many of these people are able to catch themselves and start to rebuild and get things back in where we have these transactions taking place. Basic transactions, here's selling, purchasing, and sort of getting the economy back into some sort of normal input. Why are we faced with this at this point in time?
while the Confederation of Business, that association had done an estimate that roughly 6,000 SMEs went under during the pandemic. The state did not do anything post-pandemic to say, look, let's find those 6,000 businesses. Let's see what condition they are in, and let's see how we can help them recover. Nothing like that was done. There was so much of opportunities post-pandemic for the state to find businesses that, look, there were plenty of businesses that don't have the necessary paperwork to get all the SME grants and some of the COVID grants and so on because they were not formalized in the system. Since 2021, when the lifting of all, the pandemic stuff had been lifted, up to today, we are in 2023. And the state has made no effort to find those businesses and to help them, regularize their system because the next pandemic is coming. The next major interruption to global trade is a corner away. So what do? Do we repeat the same thing that happened in 2020? So we keep looking at the failure of the state to put things in action. But what is the glaring failure here in terms of Forex, Mikey? We can't give what we don't have. So with the constraint in the energy sector where most of our Forex comes from, there was nothing to address the close down of Petrotrid to rationalize, all right, we stopped the U.S. currency from that side of the equation. What do we have different? ArcelorMittal was one of our biggest earner foreign exchange in 2016. They left and they gone. Nothing to address that. We've done nothing in terms of our deep water exploration to encourage more investments in deep water to boost our oil and gas exploration. Dragon, where we ought to be getting gas, Stuart Young and they continue to fail to work on a negotiation to get that off the ground. So the state really has failed terribly to open up our space that we can drive more Forex coming into the system. ECLAC, which is the Economic Union for the Caribbean and Latin America, they estimated that we lost $941 million in outflow. Not injection, that is businesses that left Trinidad and Tobago. How can you operate like that as a government and not address those issues? All we have the Minister of Finance doing is every time we want money, we go out and we borrow, and we come and we beat with chest. If we have a successful round of borrowing, we now borrow $500 million US.
All right.
We are beating our chest to borrow money.
But let me ask you this. The American Chamber of Commerce CEO, which is Noah Tawari, said that it could be partially connected to a reduced amount of foreign exchange being sold to authorized foreign exchange dealers, including the banks, by the upstream energy and petroleum companies in recent months. Then who's getting it?
And that's the question. Now remember, the last governor of the central bank attempted to give the country an idea of where the Forex went.
Right.
Obviously, he was fired for that. Right? Now, I'm saying I don't necessarily need to know who are the specific persons, but tell me which industry is getting the bulk of the Forex. And listen, if you are selling the Forex in industries that employing 1% of the population, and the industries that are hiring 20 and 30% of the population, you're starving them for Forex, then we have a problem. And if we're starving the SME sector, which pre-pandemic was employing over 200,000 citizens, but then that is a problem the state has to address. So we don't know. We don't know where the foreign currency is going, and as you can see when you look on the left of Movie Town, the 10 lots filled with motorcar.
Yeah, but you have the Minister of Planning, Paulo Gopiskun, saying that the backbone of the economy is based on these SMEs. These SMEs are needed. Let's not, some folks may look at it and think, well, their perception is some mom and pop store, but that's not the case. As you said, they run deep as far as the economic vein in many of these communities. Maybe mini-marts, maybe sponsoring of cricket, and the list goes on. And if they are not getting it, and if even the authorized foreign exchange dealers are not getting it, again, then who's getting it? And why? And why so much that others simply just cannot go to the counter and access these things? I asked you early on, and you said, the boxes, of course, you can check it. But how is this going to affect as far as overseas travel, as far as CAL Airlines? Is it going to have any sort of a negative outlook as far as, the airline and what have you?
There must be, because you are constraining the ability. So let's assume you have some businesses that have, redesigned their business post-pandemic to operate with credit cards. Now, I tell you, that's the reality of the matter, because I'm a small businessman as well, right? And to pay foreign bills, about 2 or 3 years ago, when we couldn't get the U.S. currency across the counter to pay bills, the bank says, look, Mr. Paray, take 2 or 3 credit cards, and when you add it together, you will be able to get your value that you want. So you've taken your business and you've shaped it around your credit card purchasing. And remember, every credit card you bring out is a charge. Every transaction is an additional charge. So it's a cost to small business just to have a credit card. And now you're telling me you've cut that by half. Some SMEs now have to go and resize and reshape. And some of them who may have been planning to buy equipment, to buy new equipment, new capital to put into their business, now they can't. So you are strangling business expansion on the SME side of the business. So whereas next fiscal year in 2024, I would have planned, look, I want to expand my business and hire about 10 more people to buy 2 sewing machines, 3 mills. Now I can't do that. So really and truly, you're really stifling the economy by doing this, because it's really now the SMEs have to pull back and reassess. And who knows, you may even see a further uptick in unemployment.
Yeah, the CEO also mentioned, he says that our economy is, after all, the largest in the English-speaking Caribbean. It also has the largest financial sector, and so we simply cannot continue in this manner. Where are we losing this? I mean, it simply cannot be a lack of vision. Because when you have all these talented entrepreneurs who are, adding their ideas and simply saying we just want the resources, and most importantly, we want to have a fair playing field. You can't simply sideline these companies and simply say, listen, you're going to give preference to others. Where are we going? In the backdrop of being that large English-speaking financial sector, where are we really going here?
Trinidad and Tobago is the only Caribbean island that has had this net outflow of foreign direct investment. No other Caribbean island has registered net outflow. You've had interest in those islands, right? What we have is a breakdown and a lack of investor confidence in Trinidad and Tobago. And that has a tie into the issue of crime. Look, today, you've seen the notice by the Canadian Embassy in terms of its travel advisory. It's a scathing report on Trinidad and Tobago. So when you have the British, the US, and the Canadian embassies talking about travel advisories, you're talking about every tourist, every traveler come to Trinidad and Tobago walking with 2,000, 3,000 Canadian or pounds or US to spend in the country. And when we stop these people from coming in, it's a drawdown of foreign exchange capacity. What about new business? When a new business, now capital is coward, as you would know, Mikey.
Of course.
Capital wants to go where it feels safe with the best return on its investment. But if a company cannot assure its staff that, hey, I'm going to send you to Port of Spain and you will be safe, well, that is a problem. And when we have a system here in Trinidad where the police can throw tear gas on citizens in Queen's Park West, across the road from BP and Atlantic and all those foreign companies, to tell a message to their head office in London or France that, hey, we tear gassing people in this country. All of these things, it leads to a breakdown in investor confidence. And that is a challenge. I think the Keith Rowley administration has really sunk Trinidad and Tobago really to the bottom of the barrel. In 1999, we were written in the LA Times. They said Trinidad and Tobago was a tiger in a sea of pussycats. Look where we are today. Look where we are today. And I saw something on social media this morning from the last TKR Guyana match, there was a poster a young lady had.
Yeah.
And the poster had an important message. She says, it's not about curry chicken versus chicken curry. It's about oil versus no oil. Understand the implication of what was written on that poster? It is about oil versus no oil, and it's how we are being seen by our Guyanese brothers and sisters. Right? So when you have the finest shipbuilding company in the world bypass Trinidad Strait and go to Guyana, and we have the safest harbor in the whole of the Caribbean, that's Chagaramas. They pass we straight and go on to Guyana. That is a lack of investor confidence. And unless we don't address that, and that can only be addressed, Mikey, with a change of administration. The PNM does not have the wherewithal, the know-it-all to do it. I can tell you, the PNM knows how to win election, but they do not know how to govern. And that's a fact. And we are at a crossroads today, where we have 24 months before a general election. And they are going to continue to slip and drive us down in a deep hole that no matter who's in government in 2025, it's going to be a very difficult place to lift ourselves up from that. And that is what we have to be very wary of.
Yeah, and again, looking at the environment, if we look at it realistically, one would think that the role of any democratically elected government would be to ensure that those who have the entrepreneurial spirit, who want to get into business, have the resources that are there, and simply have access to legislation, all the supported things that are needed. Because government has no business being in business. Let's be honest here. No business whatsoever. And yet still, this is the reality of it. The fact that you have to deal with registration, you have to deal with the banks, because those policies are they're changing on a daily basis. There's no longer commercial deposit. You simply put it in the box and they try to, put it onto your account. And we'll get into that at some other time. But the mere fact is, the people, again, and I want to emphasize on this, the people who are getting this foreign exchange, the most important thing I want to ask is any of it being returned back to the local system?
I would be interested to find out, in total, all these foreign franchises we have, Starbucks, Popeye, all of these guys, where are they getting the absolute U.S. currency from? Because I know they're not selling coffee and chicken in U.S. dollars. Are they having the same problems that we are having? Right? When you look at the whole spate of outflow for some of these companies, all right, if they are given priority, why are we being treated different? That is why I called on the minister that although you just talk to central bank and talk to the commercial bank and the big players, bring the small chambers, Cuba, Shagwana, Sandy Grande, bring those heads and let them tell you the impact it is having and offer suggestions how we can get access to a fair amount of foreign currency as well. And I think the minister himself did note that the amount of foreign currency that was used this year was equal to the amount last year. Now that tells me, if it's the same amount, why is the banks curtailing? If you imposed all these taxes, there was a slump in terms of purchasing power, in terms of imports, and we're still having a problem. So I'm going to ask the commercial banks, if the minister, and I think Conrad and Hill had said it in Guyana as well, that we don't have a Forex crisis, is it that the banks are suffering small business for no reason? Or can these managers of these banks, these boards and these directors of the banks, come out in the public and say, hey, the minister is being untruthful and we have a problem getting Forex? Because one out of the two groups are not being honest with the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And something has to budge. So the minister says they're going to talk. I want to make sure that the small businesses, those associations, are represented at that meeting so you can hear the concerns. Because it is going to have a ripple effect coming into Christmas. As we head down into Christmas, fellas who would have had a little half a container and quarter container of goods coming in to sell for Christmas, we're going to get the foreign currency now to pay for those things. It may end up on the port, and they have no money to clear it, and it may get seized. All of these are possibilities, because we're 3 months, 4 months away from Christmas.
That's right. And retail is something that helps move the economy when it comes to the Christmas season. I mean, the U.S. relies on it heavily to ensure that they have an uptick in their economy and the activity taking place. But again,
some businesses wait.
Yeah.
They wait for Christmas to make a return for the entire year. You understand?
Yeah.
And that is going to be a challenge for a lot of them.
But again, the domino effect, if the businesses are not getting access to Forex, if they're not able to function, then they will have to close doors. And if they do close those doors, then there are more people that are going to be on the breadline. And this is basically where we need to be looking at. The people who are making these decisions, do they understand the effect that it has? Not just from saying, listen, you cannot access or you don't have access to this, but along the way, it affects so many different people. We're talking about the economy. Has that message reached, or is it simply being ignored?
My experience, Mikey, is that governments, they make decisions and they measure the impact along the east-west corridor. Like during the pandemic, when they decided that banks should be closed and only one bank was opening, on the east-west corridor, you have 14 banks on one stretch. In Mayaro, I had one bank open for 41,000 constituents. So sometimes I feel that the decision making in Port of Spain, they see Trinidad as only the east-west corridor and don't understand the impact of those decisions on rural communities like Mayaro, Guayari, Hindustan, Maruga. They don't see that at all when they're making these decisions.
Yeah. Any closing comments? Go right ahead.
Well, Mikey, thank you very much for allowing me to speak a bit on this matter. This is a serious concern. Sometimes, people feel that, when we talk business at this level, it doesn't impact the man on the ground. But I can tell you, these ripple effects, while you may not feel it now, January, you're going to feel it. And just to top it off, I came from beach today. I met with some agricultural farmers. And I was surprised to see the impact, this heat wave, lack of irrigation. We have food crops that where the buds and the flowers are falling on the ground. So I am going to see a massive shoot in food prices in the market in a couple of weeks. So all of these things combined with the SMEs and Forex, it is going to be a difficult period coming into this Christmas season. And I want consumers to be vigilant, make good choices, manage your spending, because it's going to be very, very difficult because of the government's ineptitude in being able to foresee some of these issues when making some of those decisions. But we remain alert as an opposition in Parliament. We'll continue to represent all of the people, and I look forward to joining you at another evening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paray. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Best of luck to you and your entire team, and we'll be speaking to you, of course, sometime in the near future. Thank you so much.